Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra. Dairy production in India began as far back as in the 3rd millennium BCE and may have been a factor behind sustaining the Indus Valley civilization, according to findings from a team of Canadian and Indian researchers. The results were based on molecular chemical analysis of residue in shards of pottery, which was found at the archaeological site of Kodada Bhadli, a rural settlement located in Gujarat. Of the 59 samples studied, 22 showed the presence of dairy lipids. Through a process called stable isotope analysis, the researchers were also able to identify the type of remnant used for dairy and concluded that these were cattle like cows and buffalo rather than goats and sheep. Experts say that the availability of dairy production may have helped sustain such ancient societies. This would have allowed the accumulation of a surplus of animal protein without affecting the number of animals in the herd. The study published in the journal Nature was led by Kalyan Shekhar Chakravarti, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Toronto, and dates dairy production of 2500 BCE. Kalyan says that this is the first time it's been proved scientifically that dairy production was in place in the Indus Valley civilization in that period of time and the earliest known evidence of dairy production. In fact, we'll talk about this and the significance of this development and this finding with Professor Kapil Kumar, who's a historian. He joins us on the broadcast. Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is also here with us. Major General Dhruv Katoch also joins us on the panel, and Vasant Shinde will also be joining us very shortly on the same. Professor Kapil Kumar, let me start by asking you a very simple question, sir. And if you can tilt your camera so we'll be able to see you better. What's the significance of this particular finding? We've been discussing Keladi and other, in fact, excavation sites in India in the last year or so. According to you, we'll start with you and then we'll debate about this. What is the significance of this find? What does this mean?
Well, firstly, this doesn't surprise me at all, this find. Because I've been always saying that the more scientific research we do into these areas, the more revelations will come out about our ancient societies.
Okay, so you'll have to tilt your camera. So you'll have to tilt your camera.
Mahabharata sites.
Professor Kumar, Professor Kapil Kumar, you'll have to tilt your camera, sir. We can't see you. You have to tilt your camera, sir. Just tilt.
Sir, I have a problem with me because I'm doing it from the...
there you go, sir. There you go, sir. There you go, sir. Now we can see you. Just stay this way, sir, and make your point. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. What I was saying is that I am not at all surprised at these finds, because I have been saying it for long, that the more scientific research will go into these areas with new scientific tools which we have at our hands, we will be finding much more new things about our ancient societies, what they had, what kind of scientific developments they had, what all activities they were doing, which had been very intentionally suppressed over a period of years. This closing of research, now I'm very happy that there is a Canadian and Indian collaboration which has done it. Why can't we open these collaborations, you see, to encourage more research and more excavations in these areas? And then I've been arguing, at your channel only, that why can't the Archaeological Survey have its own DNA testing facilities, have its own scientific labs to test these things? Why we have to wait for years to send these abroad and other places and then get the results? And we need to have more funds put into these kind of activities. I've been saying let the corporate sector come forward, let the local population come forward, contribute to it, and do encourage this kind of a research. You see, the reason for this is Indus Valley thing, that you find so much emphasis on the dairy, on the animals in this, on the seals and all.
Okay.
Which clearly means that they had not only domesticated animals, but they were using animal power for multiple purposes. Whether it is carts, we have carts of that period. So you are using it for carts, you are using it for other things. So that is why if the dairy aspect is coming in that,
okay.
I'm happy to say that such things are now coming in the public.
Okay, Kalyan Shekhar Chakravarti, in fact, who led this particular study, is also with us on the broadcast. Kalyan, thank you so much for being here and speaking with us.
That's my pleasure.
Elucidate for us and our viewers, uninitiated viewers, what is the significance of this particular find?
Yeah, thanks for having me. These findings are very important, and as Dr. Professor Kapil Kumar has said, that this result does not surprise any of us, because we were expecting that dairy production would go even far back in time. The importance of this study is, however, that the domestication of the animals and their exploitations, when you don't have to kill the animal and you can exploit milk without killing the animal, that can generate surplus, that can generate a lot of food, essential proteins. And once you have that ability, that changes your economic and political aspect of the society. You know, when we talk about in the civilization, we talk about a big society, we talk about a large number of population. We talk about, you know, a great interconnection, inter-regional and regional connections. And when you have dairy that can be, you know, stored, consumed, and transferred between settlement, it has definitely provided a lot of food as well as surplus. So this is another aspect about how in the civilization were able to sustain themselves over this long period of time. So this dairy data is definitely important. And now as we have started this process, we can even go far back to identify when this kind of a shift, a technological shift from exploiting animals for meat versus exploiting animals for meat and other secondary products has happened, that, you know, shaped the way human culture is today.
Okay, Kalyan, also tell us, what would you describe as, you know, another predominant significance of this finding? You know, there's always been, you know, this argument about who is the oldest, who in fact has been around for longer, and who has been able to sustain civilization better. And the Indus Valley civilization has obviously been on top of that chart, but, you know, this proof is perhaps irrefutable evidence you know, that there was a certain level of advancements which was perhaps not to be found in other civilizations. Kalyan?
So this sort of study, the finding, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Hello. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So this sort of study, the finding the earliest evidence of milk, yeah, it's going on all over the world. Everybody is trying to, you know, trying to identify when milk was first exploited and it participated in the settlement or in the society, you know, to make it how it is today. So this sort of study is going on everywhere. Everybody is trying to, you know, identify like how old their milk consumption is and what sort of effect it had in their society. So as we did, we found the earliest evidence of dairy in the civilization. We identified that dairy was so important in the civilization, and especially it was very interesting to know, although it is not a large number of samples, but it was very interesting to observe that in India, in the civilization, the dairy was coming from cattle or cattle buffalo sort of animal, but not from sheep and goat. That also indicates how cattle from the beginning of this civilization has played a major role. Because we see cattle evidence everywhere in the civilization. We see their, we see their paintings on the pottery. We see how these animals were used as a power source. So cattle has been very important for us. It's even today, and dairy was definitely a big thing for us, even today and even then. So, so yeah, that's kind of. I mean, like whether Indus civilization was the first to discover that dairy could be exploited, probably not, because you know the earliest evidence of domestication goes far back, and I'm sure that those people have identified the importance of dairy, but Indus civilization has definitely, you know, exploited dairy to a level where it is not just for my personal consumption. It was used as a surplus, and it was used as a good to export and to exchange between settlements. So they have sort of industrialized the production of dairy from, you know, household consumption to a population-based consumption. So that's also an important part.
Okay, let's also get reactions from Professor Nalapat. Professor Nalapat, it's a very important discovery, the Indus Valley civilization, and in fact, historically also, last year as well as this year, has been replete with findings which have been tantamount in perhaps making a paradigm shift in the way we have thought about our ancient civilization. If we talk about Kiladi also, that also clarified a lot that was left to imagination, especially about the divide between Dravidians and Aryans.
Well, I'd like to say 100% agree with Professor Kapil Kumar, what he has said. And I really congratulate Kalyan for the brilliant work that he and his team have done. I only want to say that, frankly, as a country, for much of our history as a free country from 1947, we have neglected our history. I mean, if the pyramids were located in India, they'd probably be in a state of ruin now. You have something, for example, like the Ram Setu, and it has been confirmed the Ram Setu is 7,000 years old and is a man-made structure. Well, if I were anywhere near the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Tourism, by now there'd be tens of millions of people coming to look at the Ram Setu. It would be taught in textbooks across the world as a marvel from 7,000 years ago. But we haven't even declared it a monument of national importance. So this is the lack of attention that India plays to its own history. And the tragedy, I would like to say, is that we have front-loaded our history. I'm sure Professor Kapil Kumar, would have been quite, watching this, and so would Kalyan. I mean, our history, virtually, it begins when, Mahatma Gandhi came back from South Africa, and thereafter it takes off. And before that, there's really very little history that is discussed. Well, the reality is we're at least 7,000 years old. And please, this can be documented scientifically. And it's very important that this be done. I'm glad some steps are being taken in this direction. It's about 5% of what needs to be done. And I hope it will soon reach 20%.
Okay, let's also get a reaction from General Katoch on this. General Katoch, important point is that our history has to be correct. Our history has to be reported correctly. It's not what have happened. Usually what we are following today is what has been reported to have happened.
Yeah, very correctly put. And you see, I've been on such shows earlier with Professor Kapil Kumar, and he's always made brilliant points on history. But before I give you my comments to Kalyan, my compliments to it. Has been a brilliant work, as Professor Nalapat said, and I hope more people like you come out and continue with this. Now, Vineet, there is that very great African proverb which says that unless the lions get their own historian, the history of the hunt will always glorify the hunter.
Very true.
Now, I think this is what has happened in India. We have never really bothered about our history. And the history which I was taught in the 50s and the 60s is something which was absolutely outrageous, because that was not the history, that was not our history. It was a history given to us through the prism of the British. And then earlier we got history written through the prism of all the invaders. But now I think the time has come that we have the means, we have the scientific means and the technology to put across to the people of India with scientific evidence, without any political bias, what has happened in this country thousands of years ago. And it will also fit in beautifully with the Prime Minister's Atmanirbhar campaign, where when Professor Kumar talks about testing labs and all that, I think that has to be part of your Atmanirbharta. India should be able to do it ourselves. And I think here, when he again talks about corporates, I think what we need to emphasize to the government of India is that corporate social responsibility funding, this could be included into that funding as a system. So once the corporate once the government puts it into that bracket, that CSR funds can be made available or can be correctly used for such processes, I think a great step forward would have been taken, and the corporate can go forward. Now, many books have been written now, which are now coming out. Just one more point, Professor, then I'll leave the floor. Many books which are now coming out, they have effectively debunked this Aryan-Dravidian theory. And I think it is time we need a young group of people, the young historians in the 25s and 30s and 40s, the real youth, getting together and rewriting our history in a totally apolitical, scientific manner, so that our children and future generations will not have to go through the handicap which I have had to go through, and people earlier to me, my father and grandfather and the entire lot, had to go through. And that is why people like Professor Kapil Kumar, the work which you are doing is human service, and I wish more and more people come up and continue with this work. Vineet.
All right, absolutely. And historian Vasant Shinde also joins us on the platform. Sir, if you can hear me, I don't have your video as yet, but Mr. Shinde, can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you, but my video is not doing.
Okay, so we can't see your video. In fact, we'll try and figure that out.
What I'll do, I'll just come out and join again, perhaps.
Yeah.
Can I make a quick point? Can I make a quick point?
Go ahead, Professor Kumar. Go ahead.
Yeah, you see two things. One is regarding the importance of this, that we had sufficient literary evidences with us about cattle breeding. That is where the cow becomes the important mata, you know, in the Indian cultural context. But we were laughed upon. And now these evidences are coming and proving that out. Second thing I'd like to share with Dr. General Katoch is that the General Saab, on this channel only, I had promised 6 months back that I'll be moving ahead in this area, and I'll inform you that I have formed now a trust it is titled like Organization for Unearthing Suppressed Realities of Hindustani History. And we are now collecting funds for that to promote research, to promote videos, to promote the audios on this kind of research, to bring out the suppressed realities of Indian history. And we look forward for all your support. But this thing is very important like you have used the word Ram Setu. Equally important is it in relation to our cultural aspect of the cow aspect, the importance of cow, why cow became a religious symbol in India, why it is known as a mata, is because now we are having this, archaeological evidence also going to support that, which has come through us through the Vedic literature and other ancient literary sources.
Right, absolutely. And in fact, we'll try and reconnect with the historian Vasant Shinde. Mr. Shinde, if you can hear me, sir. Okay, there still seems to be a connectivity issue over there. We'll go to Kalyan. Kalyan, what's going to be the next step, towards this exploration? What's the next, logical subsequent step that you are planning to take in terms of furthering, this find?
Yeah. Before I answer this question, I would like to thank Major General Katoch and also Professor Nalapat for praising our work, and we are very glad that you guys have all liked our work. And just to add one more thing, like when I started this as a student, I never had a very strong background that people would trust me that I can do this kind of analysis. And I was very glad that Deccan College and ASI, Archaeological Survey of India, they were very cooperative. Whenever I asked for any permission, they were always upfront, giving me permissions, giving me materials, and just giving me all the support. So I'm grateful to them. They have done a brilliant work, and they have brilliantly supported me throughout this research. So kudos to them. Now to answer your question, what would be my next step is that so now we have seen, we always thought that molecular remains that we cannot visibly see in an archaeological settlement are actually present, that are even older than we expected. So, and this sort of data does indicate that we can take this study forward and even extract further molecules, for example, proteins, and we can even study older material. So, so that's a great achievement for us, just to see that, yeah, India is capable enough to preserve a very old organic molecule. So my next step, we are trying to apply for funds and going further, because these studies are expensive. So, accessing those instruments and analyzing using those instruments, the instruments cost millions of dollars. Crores of lakhs and crores of Indian rupees, and also to use those instruments when all this big research are going on is a big challenge, and it's costly. So So now we have seen the preservation. We can go even further. We are planning to go to find the earliest evidence of dairy in India, how cattle, buffalo were exploited versus how sheep, goat, the primary 4 domesticated animals of India were exploited, or rather not exploited, but were participated in human development would be probably a better non-political way of saying it, would be interesting. So that's what we are interested and we are trying to go. So now I am trying to go forward with this study and try to incorporate more samples, more sites, even older sites, not only from Indus civilization. We talk a lot about Indus civilization, but our society, our India is not only limited to Indus civilization. We have lots of Chalcolithic, a lot of Chalcolithic.
Okay, all right, Kalyan, I get the gist of where you were headed, and in fact, let me wish you all the best for the next step towards this great success. The entire country and the historical community owes you a debt of gratitude. And gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of this wonderful debate. We go to a break. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned.